Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. on March 7th. And I'm going to start with approval of the agenda. And I do have a change so that I have a motion here moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Bateman that Committee of the Whole alter the agenda to move delegation David Green regarding strategic plan and water issues to section 6, public comments. Any questions? All those in favor? Okay. So then I now have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that the Committee of the Whole budget meeting agenda March 7th, 2019 be approved as amended. All those in favor? And next is declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Anyone? Councillor LeBlanc?
I would have one relating to the dog park.
To the dog park if it comes up. Okay. Any other declarations? Mayor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If any discussion comes up with regard to the Hilton Cemetery is owned by Trinity St. Andrews United Church, and I sit on the board of Trinity St. Andrews United Church.
Okay. Absolutely. Clerk?
Just so you're aware that we now have to do the statements through our iCompass, through the portal. So if you could do that in the morning, I'll show you, Doug.
Tomorrow morning it'll be in the afternoon because
Okay.
I'm buying another property.
As soon as possible. It's fine.
I'll be with lawyers tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. So delegations have removed. Next, we'll move on to staff report. And before we begin that, just a couple of things so that everyone has an idea of what we're doing tonight. So tonight we're going to look at the capital budget. First, we're going to have our Director of Finance, Linda, go over the overview of the whole budget, and then we'll dive into the capital budget. So Linda has a PowerPoint. She'll go through that, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of clarification. We're not going to do any deliberations or debate at that time. Just ask Linda any questions you may have. And then we'll move to the capital budget, and we'll go through each department. Again, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of clarification. No deliberations at that point. Once we've asked all our questions and each staff member has gone through, or, well, if we need them to go through, and then we'll go to the next part, and we will deliberate on the capital budget. So we'll just run it through that way. That way we kind of keep things on track. So first we'll start with Linda. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for making time in your agendas to come and have our first budget meeting. And I know it's a late process this year. We usually are doing this in December, and now we're in March, partially because of a new council being elected and having so many things going on at the beginning of your term, and partially because we were waiting for staffing to be in place to help us get some more secure numbers in our budget. So thank you to all the staff too that have helped put the budget together, because this is not something that I do on my own. This is something that is completely staff driven, and it's a team that participates. So thank you to all of you guys too. So first we'll just do just an overview of your budget book. I'm sure that especially if you're new on council, it's kind of overwhelming to see this binder and think we have to know everything that we've read at this meeting. We're going to handle it in pieces, and that way you'll have a heads up on what the next meeting will be. And tonight, as Deputy Mayor Vink said, we're going to start with our capital budget, because it's really important, if we have any capital tenders to let, that we get them out as soon as possible. And so we can do that by resolution at the Committee of the Whole, which could go to the next council meeting for approval, and we can advance the capital budget before we approve the entire budget. So the budget binder is kind of split up into about 5 different sections. The first first section is in your budget book itself, which is under the first draft tab. It has an executive summary, and the executive summary starts at about page 4, I think. And then the next section in that budget book is the operating budget, and the operating budgets are starting, I think, at page 22. Each operating budget by department is written by the department head that's sitting here at the table. And so these are their words and these are their budgets to represent. Then following the operating budgets, the capital budgets are starting on page 42. And then at the back of the book, the thick part is the grants and aid applications that came in from various groups in the community that are requesting grants from council. And finally, our external boards and agencies are Schedule B. So that's sort of how we work through our budget book and how council, committee of the whole decides which portions they want to tackle at each meeting. That's your prerogative. And we'll be willing to move around the budget book as you see fit. So in the executive summary, which is that at the beginning of that budget book that we gave you, there's some information on the efficiencies and improvements that we accomplished in 2018. So these are some of the capital projects that we undertook, or some of the efficiencies we created departmentally that we wanted to highlight so that the new council coming in could see some of the things that we just accomplished and that we've been working behind the scenes as you were running for your positions on council. We also have opportunities and challenges in 2019 within the executive summary. This is really important for us to note because and that's on page 5, because we did have challenges in building the budget. And although we had the opportunity of receiving extra funds from Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund or the federal gas tax, which we can use towards capital projects, we also had operating challenges when building the budget. For example, some of the staff complement that we're rebuilding through the newly approved organizational chart, renewal of rolling stock so we can reduce maintenance costs and downtime and become more efficient in our especially in our snow removal, increases to the external loan payments, which were for projects that were previously completed and approved, and we discussed just at the other council meeting. We are very fortunate to have just over $10 million in reserves, and I think that is something that we need to build into our long-term plan, not only to put away more reserves, but to use the reserves for the projects that they were set aside for. Another challenge that we had was pre-approval of the stormwater initiatives because we undertook that stormwater master plan last year. And finally, the planning department is seeing significant increases this year for various reasons, and we can talk about that when we're discussing operating budgets. Also included in here are some of the items that we couldn't include in the first draft budget. Some of these items have come out of your recent strategic planning meetings, and some of them were staff-driven items that we would have liked to have included if we had room in the budget. And then there's also various summaries for informational purposes within the budget book. This slide illustrates our changes to our capital budget, to our contributions to reserves, and also to our operating budgets. And so you can see that we have an impact, a change in our capital budget of $116,895. And as we discuss our capital budget tonight, you'll see where those amounts are coming from. That's the tax levy increase only. And then we're not having any additional reserve contributions, although they may be different than last year. We're not having any increase in that. And then the operating budget has a significant increase. So I just talked about our challenges and opportunities, so I don't need to do it on this slide. We just talked about that. So what is creating our increase? So if we look at our total external budget increase, it's 0.38%. But we also have what we're calling service delivery enhancements. So the increase to the stormwater budget of 2.64% includes all of those initiatives that are recommended through our stormwater master plan for this year. And also we have increase in staffing that was approved through our org chart. And that's for public works operations. It's a 0.82% increase. We also had an increase to debt payments, whether it's external or internal. And we can talk about those internal debt payments as we're going through our capital budget as well. And then we had other internal operating increases of 0.12%, and the increase in capital was 1.47%, which takes us to our total budget increase in this draft budget of 8.65%. So some of the service delivery challenges that we've been facing over the last few years is illustrated on this slide and is also documented that since 2008 we have added 10.2 kilometers, approximately 10.2 kilometers of road and sidewalk infrastructure. So we have that now as new infrastructure that we need to maintain. We need to plow, we need, to trim the verges or whatever the case may be. So that's obviously putting some strain on our operations in public works. And also since 2003, we've actually reduced our operations staff at public works. So where we used to have 2 public works supervisors, one of them wastewater supervisor part-time, we now have 1. And where we used to have 7.75 public works operators with the other portion of that person being a wastewater operator, and we now have 7.25. So the share is greater to wastewater now, and essentially is just for snow plowing operations that we use our wastewater operator in public works. So here's a list of some of the items that we didn't include in the first draft budget, and there was some information in your budget package about requesting increases to staffing. They weren't included in the organization chart, so they're not included in the budget. The grants and aid have not been included in this budget, so that is a 1.5% budget increase when we add that in. And then the self-contained breathing apparatus, which is a CBA for the fire department. We started off with, I believe, an amount of $240,000 that we were going to need over the course of a few years, and we've been putting money away in reserves for that. So this is a reduced amount. This is the amount not yet funded. When the Stormwater Master Plan was presented, there was a recommendation of a rate study, and we have not included it in this budget. As well, the Parks and Recreation Plan consolidation through the strategic plan, that discussion took place, as well as an economic development plan. So they're not in this budget. So those of you that have been on council before have seen this slide. What it essentially is if your taxes on a residential property were $250,000 in 2018, and we approved this budget, council approved this budget today, with the county having a 2.27% increase into their taxes, and assuming the education rate stays the same, which historically it's decreased. And with our municipal levy that's included in this budget, it would be a blended rate of about 3.98% or $121 for that $250,000 assessed property. So where do your taxes go? Of all the taxes that we collect in Brighton, and again, this is a property that was assessed at $250,000 in 2018. So, and increased by the average assessment increase. It's now assessed at $256,523. The taxes would be about $3,175 a year. That shows on this slide as well, the previous slide. So of that $3,175 each year, 62.7% of that does not stay here in this municipality to pay for our local services, and 37.3% of that, those taxes do stay here to pay for our services. And you can see that roads and winter control are 19% of that tax, the amount of taxes that you pay, etc. So external budgets are something that we're going to discuss at a later meeting, and that's what's included in your Schedule B. And we have included the estimates for some of the boards and agencies. Now we're just missing one. Tonight I put the Quinte Economic Development budget on your tables to be put into your Schedule B, and so you're only missing one now. So hopefully we'll see that really soon. Staff this year have included any contracts or agreements that are currently in place within the budget already, and it's not included in your grants and aid. Some examples of that are the $15,000 for the curling club. It's in the budget. $30,000 for the YMCA is in the budget. And a couple of other items that we'll talk about as we go through operating is the Brighton Crammy Chamber of Commerce Business Achievement Awards. I'm not sure exactly the title of that, has been included in the budget, as has the Quinte Business Achievement Awards. They're included in the budget as a line item each year, and we've done so again this year. And your grant and aid requests are your thick part of the binder, Schedule A. So in 2018, Brighton had the second lowest tax rate in Northumberland County. Hamilton Township used to have the second lowest and Brighton the third. Now Hamilton's tax rate is higher. So assuming all services are the same, for each of those two municipalities, Brighton and Hamilton. And if we had increased the taxes to the same rate as Hamilton Township last year, it would have cost that average $250,000 assessed home $33.23 a year. But we would have achieved almost $194,000 in revenue. So the impact of our taxes staying low is that we lose this foregone revenue, but it's also, your taxpayers are going to ask you to keep the taxes as low as possible, and I think this illustrates that Brighton has been keeping our tax rates low, and we've actually slipped a little bit behind. And I will leave this slide up because this could be for future discussion, so I'll turn the floor back over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for that slide presentation. I'm wondering if any council members have any questions of clarification from the Director of Finance. Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Linda, you said that as the budget stands right now, we will have a tax increase of 3.98%.
A blended rate.
Right, yes, a blended rate.
Yes.
But you also said there were significant dollar amounts that were not included. I kind of quickly added them up to the tune of $600,000. Those are not included at all. That number, that
slide that talked about
what is not in the budget.
Correct.
If, hypothetically, we were to put that whole $600,000 in the budget, because those are items that are now missed, how many percents would that add?
Assuming we're all taxable.
Yes. Won't scare you.
They wouldn't.
The blended rate would be 7.43%.
Thank you.
Just to add to that question, but not all those things would be tax supported. Correct, right? In general, those items that we have listed there would not all be tax supported, would they?
Well, I think that there was 3 plans. One may be, we would calculate the rate for the storm water rate fee, like a stormwater rate study. One would assume then that would belong to stormwater because we would add a different levy for stormwater.
Yeah.
So therefore, the stormwater, there's no other stormwater there. I think the rest are, wrong mouse. I have too many mice. Let's look at this.
Yep.
Where is it? There. Oh, so grants and aid will be tax support. SCBA would be tax support. Stormwater rate study probably would not. Economic development plan would. Parks and Rec plan consolidation would. And the increase to staff would. So yes.
And the CBA would be financed over time or all in 1 year?
SCBA is, well, I would,
The SCBA, I'll just move this over. Through you, Deputy Mayor, the SCBA would be, if we were to purchase it outright, there are various options. There's leasing options or purchase over time. Realistically, that's not something that we would look at doing this year within this 2019, but it's something that we're forecasting within the next 4 to 5 years. We're going to have to do that because our SCBA will not be meeting the current standard, so we have to look at it at that time.
So we could look at perhaps putting a portion of it into the budget for the next few years. That's why
Indeed.
it's on there,
Yes.
basically. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry.
Councillor
Deputy
Tadman,
Mayor,
go ahead.
But we have been doing that. We have built up some reserve there.
Okay,
This will be the 3rd year that we have been making contributions to reserves for the SCBA.
okay, great. Councillor Anderson?
Just a quick question about our county contribution. It always stays about that amount every year? And is it accepted that amount is, like, I know they have a budget and we get the benefit of their budget, but is there anything we can do or that's done? Or does anybody ever question it?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So as you know, Councillor Anderson, I am your county councillor, and we have passed the county budget. The former county council asked staff to bring in a 2.5% budget increase for the county levy, and this council removed the, much to some people's chagrin, removed the garbage tags. The garbage voucher, the dump voucher, and saved some $230,000-ish, bringing in just about a 2.3% levy increase for this year. So the budget, like our budget, is scrutinized by county council, and this is what we got this year, is about 2.27, 2.3, somewhere around there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, one more, please.
Sure, go ahead.
About the economic development, you see, is it 40,000 or 40,000? What economic development plan? Is it just the plan, or is there anything else included in that 40,000 that's not included in the budget? Right? You took that out?
that is not in the budget. It was a recommendation through your strategic planning. It was a later recommendation probably after we had the budget developed, but it was important to list it. Another initiative that you have is to hire a person for community development, economic development in the community, like in our organization. That's not going to happen at the very beginning of the year. So by the time we're looking at hiring a consultant, we're probably going to be late in the year. Maybe something that we could put in the next year's budget. $40,000 is just an estimate.
Yeah, I understand
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So just for clarity, these are items not that necessarily been taken out. These are items that have come up that are not currently in the budget. And when we do our deliberations, we have to decide what we're going to do with these things, whether we're going to add them, put them off to other years, take a portion of it. So when we deliberate those areas, that's what we're going to talk about.
And
Do you have a new question, or?
That was just the purpose of my question.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. It's for, why has the taxes been kept so low compared to the other municipalities? And one of the reasons is this going to keep the same level of service? Or are we going to get better service? Because when I go into the community, and I've been here for 25 years, I've heard that the service isn't that good because we get the complaint for the roads, the sidewalks. And if this is an infrastructure budget, does it also look at public works? I may be getting invited myself for the vehicles. They need an extra snowplow. They need stuff. Is that into this budget? Because one of the things is we got to get better service to our public, and to do it, and it's one of the things you got to pay for it. Or you keep on complaining that they don't have a service. One has to go hand in hand. The taxes have to go up, so you can get the people, you can get the equipment, you can get everything. So could you answer that? Or Mary Tadman's going to answer it for you.
Why not?
Okay, go ahead.
It's a balancing act because people want services, but they don't want an increase in taxes, so we always have to balance that out. And when you have in your mind as a councillor and mayor and deputy mayor what you would settle for as to pass the budget, then you got to start cutting, and that does cut services and everything else. So you may want to pay more taxes, but 99.9% of people don't.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, can I?
We're not deliberating, so...
No, I know.
Can you just hold on for a second? Linda, do you have something you wanted to add to that answer? No? Okay. Basically, the reason why there hasn't been a tax increase, or very little tax increase, is because that is the budget that the council decided on at the end of the day. It's our decision. Mayor?
In many ways, I think councils of the past have endeavored to keep the levy increases to cost of living or a little below cost of living where possible. And unfortunately, when it comes to municipal budgeting, our projects tend to go up in price by the construction price index, which, as we know, is significantly, or in the last couple of years, has been significantly higher than the standard cost of living. The cost of pavement has gone up more than the cost of bread, for example. So the Deputy Mayor is quite right. It is a balancing act, and I think, speaking to what Mrs. Woodfield said, we have gotten behind, and we will continue to get behind if we continue to try to keep things to that 2% tax levy increase. I've said it in this term of council, and we'll likely have to repeat it. I just don't think Brighton can afford to be cheap anymore.
Can I?
Yep, another question?
Yes, one of the things I've noticed since I've gone through this budget twice, I'm sorry I don't have my binder, I thought it was going to be all of this, is when we had amalgamation, I'll use roads and grounds. I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you, Preston. I know you've only been here. But when they amalgamated, there was 8 people in roads and grounds. Now you're down to 6. And we've gone from a population of 7,000 to 12,000. 13,000? Okay, so we got to get the manpower and stuff to balance somewhere here. It has to come.
Councillor Block, do you have a question? Because
Yes.
you're deliberating, and that's for later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm sorry. My question is, Are we looking at, how are we going to get the staff complements to bring us to a town of 13,000 with the proper snow removal and stuff? How do we get there?
Go ahead.
Technology. Maybe I'll jump in here. First budget with the town of Brighton. Certainly one of the concerns I have is with respect to growth-related cost, and is growth paying for growth? And what's happening, quite frankly, over the last 15 years with respect to our service levels. So certainly, given that I'm on day 4 and have not had the opportunity to work with my comrades over here, I need to spend a little bit of time reviewing that and bringing forward some appropriate recommendations.
Okay, any other questions at this point? We are going to get deeper into each individual capital budget at one point, so if you have questions about the overview that we just talked about, now's the time. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Just one more quick question. Linda, you made mention that we are missing one application or in the external budget. Who or what would that be? Do you know?
Just missing Quinty Access. at
Okay,
this
thank
point.
you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay. I guess so.
Thank you. And not to put you on the spot, but as Quinty Access, do you know when we're going to, that budget will be finalized?
Yes, and Linda and I both have talked to Shelley about it. They had a big move, and so that's really put them a bit behind, but they'll have, it's not going to be that much different than the actual budget from last year, I don't think. Pardon? Keep praying.
Okay, if we're ready to go, we'll move on actually to item 6, which is public comments. And I know we have one for sure. If you want to come up forward to the microphone, I guess you have to weave your way through. Dave Green, yeah. No, that's part of the deliberations. Stick with the program. Just let me run the meeting. Stick with my program.
Thank you. For the record, David Green. I will use my time today effectively to help you understand a couple of pressing issues that should be addressed during this budget session and some general comments regarding the final tax rate. In January, I spoke to Public Works Director Preston regarding some water issues in the Brighton by the Bay community, and I followed up with an email to him and copied in council. Water discharge from sump pumps has been an ongoing issue for years, and only partially, very partially, has it been addressed. It's ironic that Preston told me that when he was a young fella, he played in the area where the Brighton by the Bay community now stands. He referred to it as a boggy marshland. Well, it's still true, it is. Initially, the homes that were built in phases 1 and 2 had very low basements, in some cases just a crawl space, because the builder at that time recognized that Lake Ontario was less than 200 meters from these houses. Over time and through different builders, the basements have been allowed to be much deeper. In fact, there are some basements in the community that have 10-foot clearance to the floor above, and the house wasn't built higher, the basement was dug lower. The concerns are limited to 4 streets: Mills, Sandpiper, Lockwood, and Nesbitt. Whereas the newer phases of our development, Ward, Schumann, and Raglan, don't experience this problem as their discharge from the sump pumps is directed to the storm sewer system. Throughout the area, there are probably 35 homes that discharge year-round. Even during the coldest days of January, these houses were still discharging. Many homes discharge to the front or to the rear swale, but many have chosen to direct their discharge water to the street. They don't want to be recycling the water through their sump pump system. When water is discharged to the street, in the winter it creates large ice patches, and in the summer it results in green slime covering the road and curbs. Both are as slippery as each other. I've had to place calls to Public Works on the weekend to ask to have ice melter applied to certain corners where the discharge has caused an absolutely unsafe condition. We've had trees killed in the community and on private property as a result of water discharge. The trees literally drown. Don't get me wrong, many people don't pump to an excess amount. I don't. It appears to depend on both the depth of the foundation and whether or not the house was constructed over one of those marsh ponds or streams. We did have some progress in the late fall of 2018. Before Lucas Kelly left us, he found some money in the budget and was able to hook up 5 homes to what he referred to as individual residential drains. They're installed about 2 or 3 feet from the curb line, still on municipal properties, and the discharge pipe from the home is directed to this drain. We were able to install 4 that serviced 5 houses, and so all of these houses were discharging to the street, and now that water has been routed to the pond through the storm sewer system. There's technical terms of big oak pipes under the ground, etc., and that's what they were able to cut into. But the issue continues, and only 5 houses have been partially solved by this change to the infrastructure. But on our drive around with Lucas, he discovered that the road construction in many areas of Sandpiper and Mills did not have a below-grade drainage system. So there is nothing for the water to be directed into. And Lucas suggested at the time that part of that was causing the deterioration of the roads. Many of the roads in Brighton by the Bay are heaved and cracked, and that has been caused, in his estimation, it has not been helped by the fact that there is no drainage from the roads about 18 inches below the actual level of asphalt. And as you know, we have a large park behind our homeowners building at 8 Mills. But sadly, we can't use the north part of that park until about July because it is an absolute bog. We can't walk on it, we can't cut the grass, we can't do anything, as we've got a couple of people who discharge in that area and it all migrates into the swale and we can't use the area at all. By way of this explanation, I'm asking that consideration be given to addressing these long-standing water discharge issues during this budget session. Unlike past members of council, I won't attempt to tell you how to solve the problem, but rather identify the problem for your consideration. My second point is in regards to the strategic plan and some of the initiatives that it should be addressed during this budget session. Firstly, I'm talking about the corner of Prince Edward and Elizabeth Street, my old nemesis, the Max corner. There's got to be a way to reach out to Max. I've spoken at council meetings before about the possibility of partnering with them to make the area something less than the eyesore it has been. If it takes an investment, then this is the time to set aside some money to get that investment done. Now, Max last year did a much better job than they have in past, but we still have at the major intersection of our town an eyesore. And sadly, across the street, we've still got an eyesore that we need to work with the owner of the existing gas station and the new Presqu'Île Cafe. But that's not an initiative that has to be done through budget, but it may result in having to take some action against some compliance issues. And lastly, the ongoing concern of an increase to our tax rate. I tend to disagree with what Councillor Tabman said in regards to 99.9%, but Brighton has enjoyed a depressed tax rate for too long. Our town is doing well, some would say booming. Regardless, we're no slouch. We are not some middling burg with an uncertain future. We've got a future. And as councillors, you cannot be fearful to present a vision for the future for the fear that the voters will turn on you if it involves actually paying more. I've said this at past budget meetings. As a community, we want more services, we want an improved infrastructure, and we're willing to pay for it. There's no need to be on the low end of the tax rate comparison, as we just saw on the screen, to pat yourself on the back. Having a low tax rate increase isn't sustainable. There may be a short-term hero point, but at some point the buck has to stop, and it's time that the buck stops here and now. Property taxes have been kept low for so long that there's room for increases well above the rate of inflation. That won't fix things right away, but over a number of years it will provide the town with a growing, stable source of additional revenue to pay for what we need, and I may add what we want. Will I be popular advocating for a tax increase above inflation? Probably not. But it's what's needed to get us on the path to recovery. For so long, we've eked our way along. Now it's time to pay the piper. And of course, some people find it hard to pay more. Seniors, for example, and there's a number of seniors in Brighton, and here I sit. Maybe we can shield them and allow them to defer the taxes until their homes are sold. We've got to get creative as to how we can help these people. We're going to ask staff to find efficiencies, we always do, and they know that efficiencies exist. They're just waiting to be asked. I tried to find a funny quote about taxes to end my delegation, but you know, there aren't any to be found. It's not a fun topic and it's not funny. But it's a necessary part of our life, and I encourage you to look to the future and give us a vision that could be understood, accepted, supported, and sustained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Anyone else? Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that the members of the Committee of the Whole receive comments of the members of public. All those in favor? Now we have question period. I have it on mine. Do we have it?
We should be going into.
Okay, I'm just following my agenda. Okay, next. Next we have our budget deliberations, and we are going to, did you want to speak a little bit about the capital budget before we open it up? It's up to you. So page 42 is in your first draft is where the capital budget begins. If you'd like,
if it's all right with you, I would just like to mention, aside from just the reports that staff have provided, at the beginning of the capital budget summary, starting on page 42, there is some information about how many kilometers of roads that we do have, and what type of surface these roads have, what percentage we should be doing, or how many kilometers each year, and what our proposed budget, how many kilometers we'll be doing in there, and then what our kilometer shortfall is. We never seem to have a surplus. And also, we have a list of all of our vehicles and equipment showing the age of some of the vehicles and equipment that we have and how difficult it is becoming to get replacement parts for those vehicles and equipment. That takes up about 3 pages, and now we can perhaps ask about the departmental.
thank you. So I trust everyone's gone through their capital budget. So we're going to just flip a few pages over, and we will start with the first item we have is general government. So I'm just going to ask, when we go through each section, that staff member can add whatever they'd like, and then council can ask any questions they'd like, and then we'll move to the next section. So the first one is general government. I'm not sure whether you or Candace would like to comment on that at all, or if there's anything you want to add to it.
Everything is in the report.
Everything is in the report. Does council have any questions concerning the general government capital budget? It's on page 46 if anyone is still looking. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
I'm going to be glad to be getting a $1,000 chair.
Yeah.
I find that a little steep, but maybe we have to get chairs that are $1,000 each. But my big question is the municipal building renovations. How did we come to $343,000? I'm assuming that's not including anything that's already been done regarding the library. Is that just basically here in this room? Are we just talking about that?
It's just the remainder of the contract that was not completed at the end of December. So the contract that for the renovations of $1.2 million, there was still $343,000 and 43,000 approximately left to be done in 2019. So we've included it in the budget.
Okay, so it's not over and above the 1.2, it's part of the 1.2.
Part of the 1.2.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the chairs are all the chairs, so there might not be quite 1,000 each.
Could we get clarification around that?
Well, 1, 2, 3. Sure. How many chairs?
Like, what's the $7,000 buying us? Is it?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
We're looking at
chairs, 500.
pricing for executive chairs. It's just an estimate.
There's 14 chairs in the room. Approximately.
That's about what it costs. Yeah.
The mayor said he will find them on sale for 3.
Did not say that.
Yep, he did.
I said, can find it on sale.
Any other questions of clarification at this point? Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Candace. We had one of our budgets and one of our meetings. We had proposed and we had voted on 40,000 for new cameras, screens, and stuff for this facility. Is this what it's for? The 20,000 in the capital budget? What do you see? 20? You see computers, cameras, screens, and council chamber. I'm sorry you don't have it.
It's for this, the computers and the screens?
Yes, because in one council meeting,
For here.
we had made a motion and it passed for 40,000. I wonder if you had found something, why it's 20. It's less here than what we had, we did. Or we didn't put a price tag. I thought it was 40. The number come up. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I just don't want,
So we have 20,000 in the budget, and that's to record the meetings, and is that to live stream the meetings as well? Is that the intention, the 20,000?
Says there is a breakdown for live streaming and.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Any other questions in this area of the budget? Okay, we're going to move on to the next, and that's health services. Again, everyone's read the report. CFO, do you have anything to add to that? Linda?
Nothing at this time.
Any questions from council? Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Of the $1.1 million, what is tax supported and what is coming from reserves and or borrowing?
So we've budgeted this for all long-term borrowing. However, that's just a cautious estimate. We will apply for, especially for the furnishings for the physicians, we'll apply for some grants and perhaps reduce the amount that we have to borrow externally.
Sure, but touching any of this would not affect the overall tax levy rate?
Would not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so the next section is the fire department. Chief Caddick, do you have anything to add to your report? Anything new?
Nothing to add to it. I just may comment just briefly. Of course, our large capital expenditure this year is what we're looking at is the new communication systems for the department. This will eventually allow not only the fire department, it will be encompassing of Public Works, Parks and Rec. All will be able to use this system, but it will start out with just fire, and then we will integrate the other departments over the next few years as they are able to change out their radio systems to the new digital, and we'll be on a digital platform, which is a little more secure and a lot better quality.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for the fire chief? Councillor LeBlanc?
one for you, Deputy Mayor. This is only capital, has nothing to do with personnel?
That's right, just capital.
So, thank you.
Any questions at this point? Councillor Rowley?
It might not be part of the 2019 discussions, but at some point down the hall, there will be additions, renovations to our fire hall. Do we put, are there dollars that go into a reserve for that every year? I know the county will be partnering at some point with EMS, right, to kind of renovate whatever they're going to do with our building. Do we put money away for that also?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Rowley. No, not currently. We don't. There are several funding models that could be used, and I know that our Director of Finance will work with us and the county on that when that time comes. Okay?
Okay, any other questions on the capital fire to budget at this point? Next is Public Works, and Preston, our Director of Public Works, did you have anything you wanted to add to this at this point?
Yes, just a point I missed for some information. On line 4 on page 50 on the bottom chart,
Yep.
it says HVAC for North Garage, so that's our Chatton Road facility. But what I did miss is that amount includes work that we need done to the doors, some concrete work inside, some grates fixed up, plus the HVAC system.
Okay. So it's not just the HVAC.
No.
Okay, any questions at all of council? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Less a question, just more of an acknowledgement. I had questions around the pricing of the trucks, but Linda was kind enough to answer them. When I was comparing the price of those trucks to the price of the Parks and Rec truck, she let me know what the difference was.
Did you want to tell us what the difference is?
Well, I saw the Parks and Rec truck was listed at $35,000, and the half-ton truck for the Public Works was listed at $45,000. So I didn't know why there was a difference. So I think you explained it in terms of equipment that's inside the trucks and plows and...
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions at this point? Mayor and then Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. At the risk of getting into deliberations, I'm going to ask a question, and you can
I'll stop.
feel free to shut it down if you want. We have a grader in here for $400,000. Is the grader primarily used for dealing with gravel roads?
It'll be gravel roads and capital road construction for our surface treated roads.
And so I'm looking at our roads that we have about 28 kilometers left of gravel road, and the intention is still to get those roads to a surface treated level. Is that still our intent over time?
Over time, if the funding increases, yes. But generally, you don't add new infrastructure if you can't afford to maintain what you have. So we're currently underfunding our asphalt road construction by quite a bit, probably 4 kilometers or more. It's in part of that chart. So generally, you wouldn't take on new surface treating infrastructure without that money to actually maintain that infrastructure.
I'll come back to that.
Okay. Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sidewalk plow, definitely understand the need for that. Having one plow with all of the sidewalks that we have here, and especially this winter, it's got to be long hours for a staff member to be doing that. So we're going to get a second one. Will this sidewalk plow also be able to handle a grass cutting machine that will help along street and road edges, as I think, as with the, in the summertime, we're kind of falling behind with some of that work as well. So are they kind of integrated as far as that goes?
It is capable of mowing grass also, and in the wastewater budget we have a mower attachment for this unit so that we can utilize it year-round, and they'll mow all the grass and edges down at the lagoon and the wetlands. No, this will just be a mowing deck, not a boom flail mower to do roadsides. We'll do roadsides with our existing tractor with boom.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you too, Preston. Do we have 2 graders?
One in Public Works.
We just
No.
have one, right?
We just currently have one grader.
And so we'll replace that with a brand new grader, is that?
That's right.
That's your,
That's
okay.
the plan.
And the other one is kaput, basically?
It's very old, and there's some details further in there.
Yeah, I realize.
Yeah, it's quite old. The mechanic can barely get parts for it last year. Currently, right now, we need it to go scrape some trenched ice pack off of the roads, and currently we haven't got it started yet. So, and it's been plugged in. We bought new batteries, but we still can't get it to go.
Just to follow up to that, and I also heard that in the summer, a lot of the time it's broken down so the roads don't get graded properly.
That's right, and I guess that was the case last summer.
So it's a real need.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point for Preston? Thank you. Okay, next section. We have Parks and Rec. Jim Miller, Director of Parks and Rec. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, everything's in the report.
Any questions for our Parks and Rec Department at all from council? It's on page 55. Is everyone, go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Just under the playground equipment, is that replacing or adding?
That's adding.
That's adding.
It's something that the community has expressed to me a few times, adding something that's compliant with the OEDA, because obviously it's a very well-used playground.
Yeah. I just didn't know if it was for repairs or addition.
No, it's for a new piece that's wheelchair accessible.
Anyone else at this point? Councillor LeBlanc, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. We've got a beautiful gazebo, and when it was being built, I heard that we were possibly have movies in the park, and there was going to be requiring a screen and screening equipment.
Oh, in there.
Yes, we have a grant.
Is that in here?
Oh, yeah. We had a report to council, I think in, was it November? We had a listing of everything. It will have a screen. It will have a sound system. It will be able to do pretty much everything that we're allowed to, that we can do with the community center.
Because when I go around, I've got tremendous feedback on excitement for that happening in our park.
Yeah, page 56, number 3, highlights everything, and that's all being put in through a grant, right? So it's not going to cost taxpayers anything?
Yeah, RFPs are ready to go. It's just a matter of when I can release them.
Yeah, that's great. Good to hear. Any other questions on Parks and Rec from council? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just glad to see we're moving forward with the skate park design as well. Thank you.
Yes, good. Councillor Bateman?
Similar to the question Councillor Rowley asked of the Fire Chief Rick Caddick, are we putting money aside for our buildings that are aging over there?
We do have in reserves, was it almost 200,000 for a new arena replacement. We have started to do the curling club as part of that grant that we give them. It'll come back through reserves. So the answer, I guess, is yes.
How are those reserves built up?
Pardon? How are the reserves built up? Oh, we do annual contributions. If you notice under operating, there will be a reserve amount, and it's that way through the parks and through marinas and everything else. I try to put reserves in every year. That way it helps to keep the cost low when we do actual capital projects. A lot of these capital projects, you will note when there is the funding formula, reserves are used.
Okay, so that the answer is somewhat yes, right? It's used for anything capital, basically, not just replacement, but we are doing that. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Oh, just a minor, people talk about increasing the appearance of downtown during the Christmas period. I know Christmas lights would be a small capital item. It might not even be considered a capital item, but I don't see anything in here for, and we talked about that, and the public did this year, spoke quite a bit about that. So.
The DBIA does do that, and they will be taking care of that, but...
They can't do it themselves, I don't believe.
But perhaps, is there a need, or are there funds that we could offer?
Yeah, part of that grant funding, I'm hoping that we will have a bit of a surplus with that once I get my projects done, that I can work with the DBIA with some funding to get it started.
That would be great.
So I'd just like to see a footnote about that somewhere. You hope to. I think it should be maybe in a plan or some. It's in a plan, I guess, but those type of things sometimes slide away, so,
It's our job to make sure they don't.
yeah. That's correct.
Right.
Good answer.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You can record that. All right. Thank you.
I agree with you. So we'll make sure that it does come up again. There we go. Okay. Any other, Councillor Rowley?
Okay.
Change the subject.
No, I'm not going to change the subject
okay.
really, but I'm just going to kind of double up on what Mr. Or Councillor Anderson just said, and also Mr. Miller. There has been some casual talks between the DBIA, especially Mr. Wayne Jefferson. He's left for Portugal, so he's not here to answer his own questions. But there's been some very casual talks as to partnering with the municipality in order to improve the streetscape for the winter holidays.
So if we do have a real concern at one point when we're discussing that budget, we can look at adding funds if we don't want to use those funds. So that will be a discussion we can have at that time, okay? Okay. Councillor LeBlanc?
Can we add different colors other than orange for Christmas? Because 90% of the bulbs were all orange. It looked like Halloween.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other question? I don't think they were originally orange, but anyway. Any other questions at this point for Parks and Rec?
They're on sale.
Or was that what they were for? Okay, I think we're done with Parks and Rec. Oh, go ahead, one more question, Councillor Bateman.
Just one question for clarification. When it says purchase and installation of security cameras for the washrooms, I'm assuming and hoping you're talking about on the outside.
Yes, yes. We are compliant with all legislation.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, moving on to planning services. Is there anything you wanted to add? Linda? We don't have a planner at this point.
Okay, so the industrial park and planning services are on the same page, but then planning services are on the next page too, so they got a double whammy for whatever reason. The industrial park expansion needs to have the hydro and gas installed this year. So that's been included in the budget of $465,000. It's in the report. It's being funded, recommended funding as internal borrowing. That's in the report already. What I wanted to point out, though, was for the planning budget itself, the mature neighborhood study OP and the comprehensive zoning bylaw updates. We could discuss when you're in deliberations other ways to finance that rather than have that as tax support.
So at that point, we will discuss that. Any other questions at this point, or any questions, I guess, as far as planning goes from council? Councillor Anderson?
I'm sorry, I missed a question in the last segment.
I'll let you.
Can we go back at some point?
Yes. If you want to ask your question now, go ahead.
It was regarding the boat launch. The question would be, is there anything in there for, people have made some comment about the actual launch, about dredging it or how choppy it is and how rough it is getting in and out of, that's the one down at Gosport, not the one on the west side, where you go in there and it just does it's rock. It's got a real deep drop on one side and the other side's up high. As you go in, yeah. I know I had a number of people say, are they going to fix that up?
Councillor Tadman, did you want to answer that?
Yeah. It's the first time I've heard about it. I've never seen anybody have any problem.
Well,
As do I. I've never heard of it.
You've never heard of it?
Well,
there was a bit of a problem when we had the flooding 2 years ago, but nothing since then.
Ontario Street I'm aware of, and we are
Yeah,
addressing that this
that's
spring.
a problem.
We are addressing it this spring. But, yeah, the Bay Street, we'll definitely have a look at it. But
Okay.
I've never been...
I know that.
And if you have comments, again, you can certainly ask Mr. Miller about it at that time. Any other questions as far as planning? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Just for the running of the hydro and the gas down to the industrial park, and the current councillors that were here previous might be able to answer. Were we not given a grant at one time? I think it was returned. Is that possible to have a grant for, is that something we're going to look into for subsidizing this? I think that was out there at one time.
Perhaps, Linda, do you have anything to add to that? Was there ever a grant? Is there ever a possibility of a grant for that?
I don't recall. I don't recall that.
Okay.
That was council previous to the last council.
Okay.
I didn't know when I did it, but I don't recall that.
Councillor Tadman? Rowley, sorry.
Thank you. How many lots have we sold in the industrial park? Just,
Well, there was 6, but then one was required.
Approximately 5.
okay, thank you.
At this point. Okay, we're going to move to environmental services. Preston, did you have anything you wanted to add? Good timing?
Sorry about that. No.
Okay. Council, any questions at this point for Preston regarding the environmental services budget? Councillor Tadman?
Not a question, just to say that it's about time. We need to put a lot of investment into all the things that need to be upgraded.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so that's it. Next, what we'll do is we'll move over to our capital pullout, and that is, if you go through your tabs, you'll see the tab for capital after the summary. And for deliberating, we'll just pull that out. It's a little bit easier. So we have listed here every department that we just talked about. We've already asked our questions. This is the time where we can deliberate. We'll deliberate. I'll just go by section. If there's things you wanted to talk about removing or adding, we can talk about it at this time. If you look, it lists the budget and then what the expenditure is, and then how it's going to be funded, whether it's going to be reserves, DC, you go across the page to external, and the last column is tax support. Does that make sense to everybody? Councillor Tadman?
Just to say that if we leave something in now, it doesn't mean that we might have to take it out later.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is preliminary. This is our first draft, so we're going to go through everything, see where we're at. There may be a few things we want to flag that we want to come back to, but at this point, this is where we're starting. Okay, so the first area is general government. The budget is $428,430, and I'm just going to go across the page. You can see all the different areas. The tax support amount for that is just $3,500. Any comments, questions, deliberation on this department? Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
I don't know if it falls under this segment or section, or if it is in a completely different spot.
Not
With the new
listed.
integrity commission, at any given time, you could have a number of those over the course of the year. Is that
Those are
anything in
not
the budget?
capital items, so this is just capital.
Okay,
That's
yeah, I just didn't
operational.
know if that
Yep.
was gonna be
So it's not listed here. No. Next week, yeah. Any other comments, questions? Are we all okay with what's listed here at this point of going ahead with that amount? Okay. Next is the fire department. Total budget $412,000, and there'll be a large amount from reserves, and the rest is the $61,000 is tax support. Questions, comments? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So coming back to the SCBA equipment, the unbudgeted amount was $195-ish thousand. If we don't fund that fully, is there a mechanism in the budget to put more money into reserves for future use?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes, we do an annual contribution to reserves for that, so there would be indeed monies going into reserves regardless.
Thank you, and that's included in the operational budget?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we put into something into reserves for a long-term project, it does go through the operational, correct?
And I know we're not debating the operational budget, but how much will be going into reserves?
19,000.
Oh, that'll take a long time to get to 195. And you need that equipment within the next 4 or 5 years?
That's correct. We'll probably be looking within the next 4 to 5 years.
As a follow-up, Deputy Mayor, how much is in the reserve now?
Well, for that particular project, there's 19,000 this year. So, and there was 2 other amounts of 15,000, so we've got 49,000.
Okay, it's a long way from 195.
Okay, any questions regarding the capital budget for fire from council, or any deliberation that you want to?
No, just through you, Deputy Mayor, to the fire chief. Is this your complete list? Is there anything missing?
For capital projects, this is the complete list for 2019.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is council in agreement with the capital budget for fire? Yeah? Okay. We're going to be done soon. Okay, health services. Any questions, deliberation, thoughts, anything you want to add? Good to go? Public Works. Sorry, I stopped reading the numbers. 112,000 is the budget, and that's fully supported, tax supported. Everyone's okay with that one? No news is good news. And then we have the Public Works equipment, as well. That's $1,025,000. A large amount of that will come from reserves, and 15,000 of that is tax supported. Any questions, comments? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. It all comes from reserve, underscoring that we will be putting money back into reserves over the years.
So that is borrowing from our reserves and repayment through our internal loan schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we have a safety for guide rails. I think that's something we do every year. I remember this from last year as well. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So we have 40,000 in that budget. Everyone's okay with that? And then we have our stormwater capital at 427,000. Go ahead.
So the Monk, Napier, and Russell Street project has been already approved by council and awarded. That's a carryover from 2018, and that project is fully funded in this budget through gas tax, OSIF, reserves, and development charges.
Thank you. So there's no changing that at this point. The next is the rest of the roads construction project, and usually we have lots of questions or comments or thoughts in this area. So the total budget for that is $1,900,000, and $1 million of that approximately is tax supported. Councillor Tadman, I saw your hand up first. Did you have something to add?
Yes, this has been an ongoing problem, I don't know how many years now, probably before you came on. South Pinnacle is a real mess, and a lot of it's caused by the water trucks that go there, and we've often talked about moving that. And is there any, Preston's so new here, he probably doesn't know about the problem right now, but you'll hear in the spring. Has there been any talk about doing something there?
We did discuss this last year, I believe, right?
We what?
We did discuss this last year again.
Yeah, we discuss it every year and then it just gets pushed away.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So in the prior year budget, we had a number in there for doing the water modeling, and that was going to encompass that particular area and what we could do there. That wasn't done last year and is in the budget again this year
So
under
it's
our
been
water
carried forward?
department. Yes.
Okay, so it is in the budget, and this year we need to make sure it happens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. By water modeling, what exactly is meant by that?
Okay, just to further clarify, then the water modeling is going to be the model that they develop for our water supply system, and it'll identify weak spots, bottlenecks, high-pressure zones, and part of that study is going to be perhaps a better location for the bulk water station, because we constantly having issues there, so it could be relocated.
Councillor Tatman?
Which needs to be done before we do anything to that particular road. But the whole road needs underground infrastructure, the whole thing. So can we soon get that put on our roads needs study? Because it's probably the worst road in Brighton.
I can't recall where it is on our road needs schedule.
It never seems to move up.
Well, and then that's identified by numerous issues, so it's priority based.
Well, I think it's put off all the time because we don't know where we're going to as you talked about water modeling, until that's done and where we're going to move that, because there's no point in doing that road with all those heavy trucks. So anyways, let's keep it in mind that we need to get that done.
Okay. Councillor Rowley?
Once again, and I thank you for giving me a copy of the roads needs study, although I haven't had a chance to look at it since last night. But I've noticed, and I know I wasn't there over the last 4 years, but I've kind of kept track. Hutchison Road has once again fallen off the list. Just what it's been pushed off. I think it's been pushed off for 6 or 8 years. So just wondering how we've justified taking it off and maybe putting 1 or 2 of these new roads on. My other question is, did we not spend a significant amount of money on both Stony Point and Shoal Point Road just a few years ago?
How long has it been?
They were surface treated maybe 2-3 years ago, something like that. Well, this is a single surface treatment, so they're already showing signs of failure. We're getting centerline potholes, different potholes coming in different areas, which is typically reflective of the quality of surface treatment program that they may have received. So the hope is with this single surface treatment layer, we can maintain that curve of maintenance for road preservation at a relatively low cost. So that's the hope. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that makes sense.
And where Hutchison Road needs a complete reconstruction. So this year, we plan to internalize our road construction this year to try to get more bang for the buck. And I'm hoping to increase our production, by at least 200% to hit just shy of 15 kilometers. So Hutchison Road could be evaluated next year. I plan on buying a better grade of cold patch that will last longer and it compacts tighter. So that will also improve the frequency that we have to patch and then the quality of the patch work that we do.
That would be awesome.
Okay, thank you. Did you have Councillor Bateman?
Just looking at the roads, I'm assuming it's not on here because it's a county road for Prince Edward Street, which I'd have to say would rival what Councillor Tadman said was the worst street. Is that because that's a county road that is not on here? Then we need...
Okay, so I've been in conversations with the county. They plan on reconstructing that road in 2022. So we're responsible for everything underground and they're responsible for curb to curb. So they'll be responsible for the asphalt. I have to initiate that project this year already because it's going to take a few years to get the approval from CNNCP to put a sleeve underneath their tracks to get our infrastructure through. And we need everything there, water from Chapel Street down, and then storm and sanitary sewer from Vito's all the way down.
Does that answer your question, or did you have something?
It answers it, and I was going to say we're going to have some of that fancy patch stuff because that's a nightmare driving down there right now.
So we want the fancy patch in the budget for that road.
That's a county initiative.
Okay, well, tell them we need some fancy patch.
Well, as I would say to any citizen who made a complaint, you can always call the transportation department at the county and offer your complaint to them. I'm sure they would be incredibly responsive, but I'll make a note.
You definitely need to hear the message of the call.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I have a question about, I see new street lights, but what are the traffic lights?
The traffic lights are the two main intersections here downtown. So there was a deputation, I guess, brought forth to council and direction provided to staff. So we did a traffic analysis, if you will, at those two intersections. So they identified some changes from that. So in obtaining quotes to get that work done, it was identified by the contractor that's been awarded the work for streetlights and intersection lighting that there's excessive work to be done. We need another control panel put in to properly isolate the two intersections, yet coordinate them. All the lights require upgrades. Between the difficulty in finding the incandescent bulbs and upgrading to the new LED, it's recommended that we totally redo those two intersections to save all that future maintenance and calling them in for repairs. We constantly have the wind when it comes through. It constantly alters the direction of the lights, as Councillor LeBlanc brought to my attention. But we fix them, and the brackets are just kind of old and worn and difficult to get parts for. So the best investment is just to redo both intersections and be done, and then move forward with the other two when the budget permits and as they age and wear out.
Good. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I just want to make a comment to that, Preston, that I'm sure that before summer gets here, that will be a very welcome change, because it's been a big safety issue for the last couple of years. So I'm sure not only the residents, but I'm sure the tourists that travel through that intersection a lot are going to find a big difference also. It's a good change.
Yeah, great. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I trust that will be done in conjunction with the strategic initiative that was identified to increase safety for the traveling public from essentially John Street to Rundle Lane along that main street corridor, Elizabeth Street Main Street corridor.
Yes, the driving factor behind all traffic regulations, design factors, anything that is taken into account is public safety driven, primarily to pedestrian traffic, especially at controlled intersections. So that is the guiding force behind this initiative, is to improve crossing times and awareness. This system, by 2025, I believe, all of our intersections have to be audible for the visually impaired, so that this new system will be capable of adding that function as well.
Any other deliberation? Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So last year we had about just under a kilometer worth of asphalt roadway projected, which we didn't get done and got moved forward to this year. So last year we had a shortfall in the kilometers that we were supposed to be resurfacing in asphalt by about 2.5-ish kilometers. This year we'll have a shortfall of about 2.8 kilometers, which means over 2 years we'll have over 5 kilometers of shortfall. So, when we talk about deficits in a community, we can talk about financial deficits and going into debt to repair things, or we can talk about infrastructure deficits. If we go ahead with the budget as it's put to us today, we'll have a 5-kilometer, give or take, infrastructure deficit just in asphalt roads over 2 years. And I'm only going back 2 years. I'm not taking this out for the last 18 years or 19 years of amalgamation. So, in a community where we should be spending, give or take, $2.5 million, $2.7 million, somewhere in that magnitude on road reconstruction every year, this year we are budgeting for $1.9 million, which means we are, by virtue of not replacing these roads, creating an infrastructure deficit of almost $1 million, $700,000, $800,000. So you know, I'm no fan of taxes, my friends. You all know that. I don't like levying them. I don't like paying them. But this stuff needs to be fixed. This is core to our economic development. If we don't have good roads for the traveling public and for our own people, everything else we do is irrelevant. Now, I know the projects we have on the books are they're a big deal, and we can't be adding more projects or we'll be stretching everybody too thin. But I do question whether we should be considering putting money into a reserve, an infrastructure reserve, to the tune of whatever the amount is, so that we can repair and replace these roads moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Tadden?
Maybe our new CAO would like to speak before me.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Through you. I agree with you, Mayor. What's critical for this municipality and all municipalities across Ontario is to understand what the long-term needs of the communities are, or the community is. And it's incumbent upon this team here before you to understand clearly what the long-term capital infrastructure gaps are, whether it's roads, sidewalks, water, sewer. So that's certainly going to be a focus of mine over the course of the next period of time, is to understand clearly what that gap is, and then look at each other and say, okay, what's the game plan? So I'll give you an example of what Kingston did over a 20-year period. They identified an infrastructure gap. They couldn't catch up over 1 year or 5 years, so they implemented a 1% levy increase dedicated towards capital to catch up on the gap. So let's understand what the gap is, and then let's put a game plan together to try and fix it.
Thank you. Do you think there's a way of putting that together for this year? Some sort of, what? Hey, I'm asking the question. Obviously, we have, we're behind the 8 ball here. And is there a way of implementing something this year so that we initiate something at this point?
Through you. I think, to be fair, I've not had an opportunity to look at our asset management plans or the roads needs study that you recently received. So I need a little bit of time to understand what the long-term financial picture is, and then try and put together a game plan. I'm sure that anything we throw at it is a bonus. I would suspect that the infrastructure gap is in the millions of dollars.
So then the idea of perhaps a reserve for this year would be maybe the way to go, so that at least we've set aside some money.
It's a start.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start over here with Councillor Anderson.
I'm glad you mentioned sidewalks, because it just reminded me of something. One of the issues with the DBIA, or a concern of a lot of people, is the sidewalks downtown. Is there anything in here for that? For improvements or repairs, or bring them up to accessibility, quality? There's been a lot of talk about that in the past year. That's one thing I'm sure of.
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask Public Works Director.
Yes, it's not in the capital budget. It's in the operational budget, because it's maintenance and repairs. So there's a substantial increase requested, and it's to address all of our trip and fall hazards, all the gaps, all the drainage problems, starting to install tactical plates at all the intersections and crosswalks to meet the accessibility standards. There's countless spots that we need to address. So I put a number from what I've observed walking around town in November and December. I put a number in that I'm comfortable with, that we can, 1, tackle and achieve, and 2, address the bulk of our liability hazards, if you will, out there.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that part of the budget, or I haven't spent time in that area, but as long as you have enough money in there to, I'm not saying brand new sidewalks or anything, but from what we were told at the DBIA AGM, and just numerous people during campaign, the downtown areas, something that might be a priority. But there's other streets, I understand, and then there's communities in parts of our community that don't even have sidewalks, that probably should have sidewalks. But I think we need to address the ones that we've got now and get them up to scratch, and then maybe move on to some other areas with some new sidewalks sometime. Okay, so long as there's enough in operations or somewhere, but I didn't see anything here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is in the operational budget. It's a good, I think we all agree on sidewalks. So we will discuss it then, and we'll make sure that we have enough in there. Councillor Tadman?
Okay, I'll go. Sorry, through you, go to the sidewalks. Every other year in the last at least 4 years, we put about 70,000 for new, plus operating.
So
I think altogether we put about 140 into sidewalks.
You're right. Correct? Previous years we would have some in capital for new and some in operating, but this year we don't have anything as far as new.
We're not going to build any new. Is that correct?
We're just focusing on repairs? Okay.
Well, then we're going to fall behind in our sidewalk plan too.
Go ahead.
But Monk, Napier, and Russell will have sidewalks included in the road reconstruction, correct?
Yes, that's correct, as part of the larger reconstruction for those streets.
Because that's our policy as we move forward, right? When we reconstruct a road, we add the sidewalk if it's not already there. It's a good policy. Absolutely. I like it a lot.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that, or are you suggesting that you want... Are you concerned that we're moving or falling behind?
As long as we're going to get a lot of repairs done, I'm happy with that.
I'd love to see us focus on repairs.
Right? Well, I think we have to.
We have to.
But the other thing I wanted to talk about, since we were talking about how we're going to catch up with our roads, we've been, I think, a bit negligent in the last few years with low interest rates. It would have been a good time, and it still is a good time to do some external borrowing. So maybe we could build that into all the thoughts that you've come forward and all the grants you're going to get from the province and the feds. But it's just a thought. Should we be considering that? I don't know at this council. Are they even considering the thought of trying to catch up a bit by borrowing and doing more roads?
Your question is, you'd like to see us do more roads this year and do some more borrowing? Is that what you're...
We can get caught up.
Are we able to do more roads with the staff we have, and is that even an option to add more?
Well, I'm talking about tendered roads.
Tendered roads.
Still take staff.
Yes.
I'm going to jump
Go
in
ahead.
here, and I've only been here a short period of time, as you know. I think we've got lots on our plate with the staff complement that we have this year. I think it's important to get the jobs done. It's already March 6th, 7th, 8th today, and all these projects need to be in the ground by the end of the year. We've got lots to do with the slim staff that we have today, so I would hesitate in adding anything at this point in time.
I think we really just need to plan for next year what we're going to do and for years going forward on that. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so speaking of, it's our policy to add things on when we're doing road reconstruction. I'm just going to wait for Preston to hear my question. So speaking of policy, it's okay. Speaking of policy about adding things on when we do road reconstruction, when we do the rural roads, it's been our practice and policy to ensure we're doing brushing and ditching as required. Is that included in the roads projects, or will that be included in the roads projects that we see listed for the rural areas?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
And sorry, just to go back to capital road construction, the one thing that we could do that would be beneficial for the future is to increase our engineering design dollars so that we can do the geotech work, all the design and planning this year for future projects, which is beneficial because we'll have the design work, we'll have better estimated costs, plus we will have an increase in shovel-ready projects in case any grants or any programs are released. We would be ready to go on more projects, and it wouldn't necessarily increase staff workload or demand this year.
So we're looking at $200,000 in the budget now. What kind of increase do you think would be helpful in order to get more work done?
It's tough to say. This was 150,000. I've added an additional 50,000 already to address the needs that are obvious on Loyalist Drive and Applewood Drive and a short section of Sharp Road in the industrial park. Because we're marketing that, we're trying to build industry in there, but the road infrastructure is crumbling. That's going to be a large dollar project because it needs a total base reconstruction because it wasn't built with the proper material. It needs some service improvements at the beginning, so that'll be a large project coming forward. But if there was another 100 or 150,000 added to that, we could probably do a few more projects and have a few more ready for the future.
I'd love to hear from council. What do you think? Are we comfortable adding something to that?
Yeah, I think the director's being very proactive here, and I know it's more money, but he's thinking the way I'm thinking, and I think all of us are thinking that way too. I think we need to bite the bullet, and I like any time you talk about planning for the future, near future. I think the public is going to support us on that. Is that we're being proactive and have a plan for seeing things in the short term, not 20 years, 10 years. We're actually doing something. So I commend you for coming up with an idea like that.
So would we be comfortable with maybe increasing that to 300,000? Would that be something that we could talk about? Go ahead, Councillor, actually Rowley and then Tadman.
Do we need a recommendation from council? Can we just make the suggestion and
we can make the suggestion, yeah.
Because I agree with Councillor Anderson. We need to get ahead of the curve. We're behind or on top, and we're not getting anywhere. So I would certainly support another 100,000 in the engineering and design line item of this budget.
Yeah, so I'm just looking for a general consensus at this point. At one point, we're going to send this to council to be approved as a whole, but this is where we're going to make the changes. So, yeah, so that's a few of us that are saying 300. Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Through you to Director Linda.
Director.
And I hate doing this to you, but I never thought of it till just now, or I would have called you earlier. But how much, we've got almost $1 million in urban infrastructure. And how much are we borrowing from that reserve?
We're borrowing from more than that reserve at this point.
Yeah, but how much would be, what's the bottom line after we're what has been suggested that we're coming out of that?
I would recommend that council focus on what you need to add. And then we look at maybe the contingency reserve for funding some of these items.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question for now?
Yeah,
Are you satisfied with
absolutely.
that? Okay. Sure.
Or do you want me to sing?
I thought you wanted to add more. Any more thoughts? Yes? Yes, that's a yes. Yes? Okay. So we're going to change that to 300,000 for now. Okay. Any other changes that we want to make to this budget before we move on? Councillor LeBlanc. Your microphone.
To the Deputy Mayor, to Preston. Hutchison Road, when I was campaigning, is basically below its base level. So basically, the ditches need dredging and it keeps on overflowing. That one needs to be raised and to be addressed. And on certain turns, it's full of potholes. And I don't know, because the grader wasn't working, probably that's why it wasn't done. But it should be part of this list. And when it comes to sidewalks, I got to thank the staff very much, or the students that were painting all the bumps orange in the spring and just did it in the fall, so we knew where all the stuff was. Because when I walked the sidewalk, I counted close to 200 of them where they would put the orange marks where they needed repairs.
And that's why we're going to focus on repairs.
I don't have enough toes and fingers, but I do. Okay, thank you. So those are some of the, because we talked about it when we were in the emergency meeting, some of the things that you needed to be done. Thank you.
Any other questions or things that we want to add or subtract? Go ahead, Mayor.
So how many kilometers long is Hutchison Road? Anyone?
Just a second.
He's got a book. He's got his cheat sheet out. It's okay. I suspect there's a gentleman in the back who could tell us off the top of his head, but there you go, 3 kilometers. Can we call it 3?
3 sounds good.
You're going to ask who?
That's probably in the roads need study. I suspect that's what he's got out. So as you're looking for,
Hutchison Road is 2.3 kilometers in length.
2.3, so that's about $160,000, $180,000 for full reconstruction, give or take?
Give or take, I haven't evaluated the road, but it would be in that neighborhood at least.
And it's a gravel road, correct?
Yes. So we'd also have to look at base improvements, because the construction costs that you see now for DSTs are rebuilding existing surface-treated roads.
So hopefully with our new grader, we add some gravel and get that graded properly for this year for the people who drive that road. And then, where is it on the list? It's not on this list. Oh, I'm wondering where it is on the roads and needs study.
I have a copy of roads needs study.
I look forward to seeing that. Thank you very much.
I don't know where it falls on the road, but I plan on increasing our frequency that we grade and also the frequency we add gravel to these roads. It's been constantly underspent in past years. So I plan on utilizing that budget to a plan where we would add gravel every other year to the gravel roads.
Thank you, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. I apologize for putting you on the spot, Preston. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this section, roads construction projects? Okay. Next page. Parks and Rec, the arena, there's just the $5,000 to replace the partitions in the washrooms. Any problems with that? No. Okay. Next, we have the parks budget at $144,000. $6,500 of that is tax supported. Any thoughts, ideas, anything you want to change? Next is the Mount Hope Cemetery, $25,000. That's for the asphalt extension. We've talked about this other years too, have we not?
It's the circular part there at the back. How to go up the hill. How you go up the hill and you can turn left and it's paved right almost to where the garage is. Yet the back part isn't, where it goes near the columbarium.
Okay.
So I was just thinking of extending the asphalt all the way around.
Okay. Any questions on this area of the budget? Okay, we're good with that. Next, we have the marinas at $82,000. We're good with that? Every once in a while, I just need a nod. Makes me feel better. Next is planning, $120,000. There we go. Much better. Councillor Tadman nodded, so we're moving on. Industrial Park, hydro and gas. This is kind of a no-brainer. We need to do this. Yes, yes, okay.
Yes, we have 5 people waiting for this to happen.
Yes,
right?
exactly. So, and next we have our sewer. In this, we have $7 million as a place marker for our MBBR. At this point, we're in the beginning stages of this, right? So it's not necessarily going to be all externally financed. We're looking at other options as well. Is that correct, Linda?
That is correct, and we also don't know the expenditures that will be undertaken this year and, next year.
So at this point, that is place marker. It does need to be there. Any questions, comments, ideas on the wastewater plant budget? Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, on the lift station, we only have design and no repairs for this year?
Yes, this capital budget only speaks to the engineering design and the study of the pumping station and the force main. Any repairs and maintenance would fall in our normal operating budget as far as pump rebuild or sensors or panels.
Okay, then.
Do you have a question? Further questions?
It's just that, I think it's December, we voted on the maintenance to go up to $975,000 for the lift station, which was part of the design and do the work this year.
Is that in the budget under maintenance then?
Yeah.
I'm unaware of
You
whatever
weren't
took
you weren't
place.
here then. Yeah.
But the 7.1 million that we have as a placeholder includes the pumping station upgrade, the force main reconstruction,
There we
and
go.
then the...
So, there we go. That's
and
the answer.
ADR plan.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
So it's all
Chris.
included.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mayor.
I'm wondering if we can add that to that line item, MBBR plus, 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 just so we know that it's not just the MBBR at 7.1.
I will do that.
Thank you, I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Okay, any other suggestions, comments? We're all good with what's there? Thank you. Wastewater distribution. That's included as part of the reconstruction, correct? 238,000, 50,000 of that will be tax support. Anything from council on that? Okay, we'll move along. Next, we're into water, and we have just the water distribution capital, 523,000, fully tax supported. If you'd like, yes.
Thank you. So the truck, $50,000 tax support, how come? Why would that not be included in the monies we raise from the users of that system?
That is rate supported.
Thank you.
So that is supported by those who are paying for water, correct? Okay, just so everyone's clear.
I don't want anyone with a septic tank paying for your truck, Councillor Rowley.
Okay, moving along. Yes, they have wells too. Okay, water distribution. 523,000, fully tax supported. Any questions, thoughts? Water, we're rate supported, sorry. It's still a tax, but it's rate supported, sorry.
Yeah, it's not on your,
It's supported.
the mayor isn't paying for any of it.
Non-mayor supported items, so he can just be quiet.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
For a few years, I've recall that there was discussion around the water department's cube van, and that it was time a year or two ago, I guess, to replace it, and I don't see it on the list this year. Are they just trying to, they don't need it now? Because you said so? Oh, I'm thinking it's, a new cube van is in the future of the water department then, it's just not on the books for this year, is that it? Because I know they've had concerns with that. It's a very aged vehicle as well, right?
Yes, it is an old vehicle. It's low on kilometers, high on age. It's not used very much, maybe 4 times a year. So the mechanic, and I had a discussion with the mechanic, he put a lot of work into it last year. He did all the brake lines, all the safety stuff, all the new brakes. So it's safe for the road. It's got good tires. As far as reliability, it's not crucial to the water system. They use it typically for repairs and breaks, so it's not a critical piece of infrastructure for them. And my recommendation would not to be replace it with another vehicle. I would just replace it with a large self-supported trailer that they could hook up to with the new truck that we have in here, because it's going to be a 3/4 ton pickup truck, and they'll just tow that trailer to the water main break. But we should be able to get another 3-4 years out of that cube van before we have any major failures or any large repair costs.
That's great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, water distribution, and that's it. So we've just made the one change. Any other comments, suggestions on that capital budget at this point, or are we good to go? Linda, did you want to add anything?
I think we can wait until we're getting closer to getting through the entire budget, maybe a meeting or two later, and then we'll talk about using how we can use some of that contingency reserve to, not because I like to use that to reduce the tax rate, but because that has been growing at the expense of the taxpayers. And what I mean by that is projects that were not completed in the past. So, such as the brushing projects and the
Yep.
sidewalk projects, that is building in that contingency reserve. So perhaps we need to get some of that other work back on the books and use some of that money to fund that.
Okay, that sounds good. Councillor Tadman.
Which brings me back to the sidewalks. Last year, we didn't, we did Ontario Street last year. But the year before, we didn't, it went into the fund, and so, no, that was 3 years ago. Was it? I think. It looks like a 10-year-old sidewalk. No, I was talking to the mayor, sorry. But anyways, we could consider doing some more new sidewalks. I know we're doing the Monk and Napier and that, but is there a place where we really need sidewalks? I know there's a problem down on, when you get to the road turning into the industrial park from there. Yeah, and to cross over, that's really dangerous there, and I don't know what we'll do with that, but that keeps coming up at accessibility because people that ride the scooters have a real problem. They don't know where to go, so maybe Preston can have a look at that sometime. But there needs to be a sidewalks, somewhere along there to finish off, because it comes so far down there, just past Loyalist, but then there's nothing until you get over onto Cedar. Like, if you want to cross over to go down Cedar, there's a big gap in there. So, we did finish the bottom of Ontario, didn't we?
Yep.
From Maine to the tracks.
There's another patch that wasn't done closer to the bottom.
I think we did fix that, did we not? Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the big one there that seems to trouble a lot of people, especially people that have disabilities.
Your mic.
Just making it.
Councillor Tadman, your microphone.
I'm glad.
Sorry, for those who couldn't hear the councillor's question, she's concerned about the intersection of Cedar Street and Ontario Street.
No.
Or Prince Edward, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that would be part of the evaluation when it's redesigned by the county to do the reconstruction in 22. That would be a consideration they would have to look at as far as
Okay.
improving pedestrian crossing there, whether or not a crossing signal system is warranted or not.
Okay. In the meantime, is there something we can do to have, because people were saying that they thought it would be better to cross at, like, the Industrial Park Road, what is that called, Loyalist?
Loyalist Drive.
Cross there because there's a blind spot, especially Prince Edward coming up this way. And when you're on a scooter, you're limited sometimes to get across fast enough. Would it be better? I mean, this is just something I'm asking, not for tonight, but they thought it would be better for them if they could cross up farther. But then does that mean that we'd have to have some kind of a crosswalk across there? Then we have to go to the county.
Yeah, I believe any of those kind of changes would have to be addressed through the county.
Okay.
But I'm happy to have a conversation with them to see if they have any thoughts or plans or anything on the books for that area, or perhaps they're already considering that in their reconstruction scope.
Thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc.
We may have the same one. When I was nominating, when I was running and knocking on doors, I think Mark Bateman heard the same one, and I think Ron Henderson heard it also in Smithfield. They started a sidewalk project in the fall and they never finished it. So they're 150, 200 meters short of the school. So they're still walking the traffic to finish. There's three. That's one of the projects they never finish. But there's other sidewalk projects that they've started, and for some reason they ran out of money or stuff, they never finished them. And it'd probably be a good time to look at, if we're going to do the sidewalks, to go finish these sidewalks that have been sitting there unfinished for 5, 8, 10, 12 years, and so they can finish it. And the citizens and the children would be a lot happier, I think. And Mark Bateman heard the same thing when we were knocking on doors in Smithfield.
Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
That's been a topic of discussion for a number of years out of the people in Smithfield, but I think what we talked about earlier about the priorities, about getting to downtown and things like that, areas like that, and then getting this plan together and look at those for the next year, and if we could put it into your budget planning for the next year to do Smithfield, that would be great. I like the idea of stepping outside of the urban area, and because we're doing a lot with the urban area this year too, with the studies, and I think we can hit the hamlets a little bit and get some improvements going on in those areas, because they're building up out there, and the schools are growing. The school's growing out there, and so if we can look at the hamlets a little bit, I think they would appreciate it too.
I have a question then. If we put sidewalks in hamlets, who cleans the sidewalk? Do we have to send the sidewalk guy all the way out to the hamlet to clean the sidewalk?
I'll tell you who clears them now.
I want the answer from Preston.
Well, the municipality has two options. Any sidewalks that are not maintained in the winter should be dedicated by bylaw as not maintained in the winter by the municipality, so it becomes a use your own risk. The other option could be to install the new sidewalks and either, well, to be honest, we don't have the staff or equipment, even with our additional piece of equipment, to go out there and do those. So it's something that we could contract out to another service provider. But yeah, so the municipality can either leave it the way it is or increase that level of service, which there'll be an associated cost with that. That I couldn't guess at. I'm not familiar with what kind of contracted services are in this area.
So when we talk about doing sidewalks in urban areas, it is a bigger question than just the sidewalk. There's more involved in that then.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other hands? I saw actually Councillor Bateman. Yeah.
Just on the sidewalk in Smithfield, I would say, since we were talking about the traffic lights and replacing the various things because it's public safety driven, I would say the sidewalk in Smithfield would jump up in priority. If you go down there, once your golf course is open at Timber Ridge, that amplifies the public safety part of it tenfold. And that's why when we were knocking, there was no snow on the ground. That road is extremely busy, and when you see the little guys walking to school with cars buzzing by them 2 feet away, that's where people really want that done. I don't know what length and what cost, but
yep,
it's more costly if someone loses their life.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I just want to be clear, we're talking about a sidewalk from Smith Street to the school on Drury, right? That's what we'd be talking about.
Yeah.
We're not talking kilometers of sidewalk here.
Okay. Anything else on the capital budget? No? Do we need to make a recommendation tonight? Go ahead.
I guess I'd look to staff to see if it would be helpful if we made a recommendation to permit staff to let the RFPs for, specifically for certain roads projects, or what else would staff be looking to council for in terms of letting early RFPs?
Yes, I think the most important thing would be the equipment and the fleet units. Getting out early, getting prices on those. The construction that we're doing this year is already awarded. The other big one would be the sidewalk replacement and repair tender. The only problem with that is we don't have the locations all identified, so it'd be kind of a loose tender that we released at this time, and I'd like to tighten all those areas up so that the contractors have an idea what they're exactly bidding on, and it's difficult for them to see that with any kind of snow or ice on the ground as well. But I can't think of a project that wouldn't benefit from being released earlier in the year or even the year prior.
I could think of vehicles, the mowers, definitely. Even the design work for the skateboard park.
Okay, so we need the wording for the motion.
So I would move that, pardon?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I would move that staff be permitted to issue RFPs for equipment and fleet purchases and also sidewalk repair and replacement.
So, okay, we have a mover and a seconder for that.
Yeah.
And you can write it.
Sure.
so we have a mover and a second. Did you have a comment then on that?
Yes, just to say that if the prices come back too high and we're got to cut someplace, we don't necessarily have to purchase every single thing that goes out in the RFP. So I think we still have a little bit of wiggle room there.
We could also finance it another way.
Absolutely.
In order to alleviate any
but
any
I think
tax support.
it's very important, excuse me, important to get these out now.
Yes, we need to. Councillor LeBlanc?
Could I have a recorded vote on this?
Sure.
Somebody told me you're the clone of John right now.
Turn your microphone off there, Mary. You can have that discussion.
Microphone's on.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Also the Main Street projects. The other thing too is all the RFPs that go out all have the line item right off the bat. It says condition on budget approval for
Yes.
council.
Yes.
So if the council doesn't approve it,
Yeah.
there's no purchases.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're just going to wait for it to be written and then we will vote.
Sorry, through you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Miller, did you say also the Main Street?
Projects, the ones that are we have the grant money for.
Yeah. We'll have Emily sign it later. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Mayor Ostrander and second by Councillor Rowley. The Committee of the Whole recommends to Council that staff be directed to issue RFPs for equipment fleet, sidewalk repair and replacement, and the Main Street projects. Anything else? All those in favor? Oh, we're doing a recorded vote, sorry.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Ovink,
Yes.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
and Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so our next meeting will be next week, Wednesday, and we will be focusing on the grants and aid. So that's the big section in your binder. Lots of reading, exciting reading for the weekend to prepare for that. And at this point, we're ready to adjourn, or maybe not.
We talked about an infrastructure reserve and levying for that, and I know that CAO Castleman's going to provide us with a robust report as we go through the year about what we should do in terms of catch-up. But I'm wondering if Council has an appetite to begin that process in this budget year by asking staff to include a 1% levy that would specifically go to an infrastructure reserve. We don't know what that percentage will look like into the future, but if every year we ask for a percentage as we go forward, we will be building that reserve for the future, and it certainly gives us opportunity this year, knowing it's coming, to start that process.
Councillor Tadman and Councillor Rowley.
I don't disagree, Mayor, but I think I would like to wait to make that decision after our CAO comes back with his professional advice.
Councillor Rowley.
I'm certainly willing to wait till next week as well, but I think staff just... Oh, well, then I don't want to wait that long. I was expecting it next week.
Really?
But I do want to compliment staff because I think, I mean, I've sat on that side, I've sat on this side as far as budget goes, and it's always a bit worrisome, and it always seems to make my head full of numbers. But I want to say this looks very proactive, and I think staff has done a good job, and I think we need to support that. And if it's 1% of the tax base to support going forward in the future, I'm all for it.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Mayor, you're talking about adding or setting up a reserve. We have $10 million in reserve. 1% would be equivalent to $80,000. I think we're looking at a bigger picture than the 80,000 is fine over 10 years or 5 years. It buys a few trucks. But I think maybe it's something to think about. Maybe if we need to really bite the bullet and get some things done and upgraded and some go back to what Mr. Green was saying earlier. I did hear you, and some of your points had some large dollar signs to it. However, if we're to achieve some of those things and Mr. Green, I think, is speaking on behalf of not just himself, but of a great number of people, that maybe we should be, nobody likes to touch that reserve. I know it's something that's been built up and it's nice to look at, but if we can put it to good use now, I think it might be time to do it.
I do believe we pull from the reserve on a regular basis, and then we put back into it. So it is a constant thing. I think what we're talking about is a little bit different. This is directly for infrastructure. Is that correct?
That is my suggestion, yes. And this is done at the county. There's a separate levy specifically to fund a reserve for infrastructure, and they draw from it. I mean, they see there's a pool of money in there, they draw from it, and therefore they're not going to the taxpayer in the general levy for certain projects. We don't know what that's going to look like. We could very well see a report come that says you need to be levying 2.5% over the next 25 years in order to get these projects under control. I'm simply suggesting we test the toe, dip our toe in the water here this year with a 1%. It's a line item. It'll be a new line item on the tax bill that says infrastructure reserve, and it's a 1%. That's my suggestion.
Okay. Linda, did you want to comment on that? I saw you at one point, or you're good? Okay, Councillor Tadman?
My concern is we're nowhere near what the tax increase is going to be at the end of our deliberations. So I think we better wait and see where we're standing before we put that line in. It's all right to say that, sure, we'd have to do all these things, but we may only put 0.5% in, or maybe we can put more than that. But let's see where we come to at the end of our deliberations before we jump taxes another percent, because right now we're sitting at, what's the increase without all the extras right now? 3.37.
Well, I don't want the combined. I want the municipal rate.
Yeah.
What's the municipal tax levy increase? Yeah. No, well, it's more than that because we just added $100,000.
It's 7.15.
Right?
That's the reality of it. So I agree that we need to do something as well. I don't know if we need to do it tonight or we need to do it over this.
I just introduced the subject so that we can.
So I think we need to discuss it again.
We can let it percolate over time and perhaps get our heads around it for the end of these budget deliberations.
Yeah. Did I see anyone over here that wanted to? No, we're good.
I just wanted to say, I think it's great that the mayor's bringing that forward, because it is something we need to do. Perhaps we'll find, or we'll discuss that we'll take his reserve there and we'll maybe move into some other reserve to do it as well. But what we're doing is just building the budget right now, and we'll see where it all comes out. But I think your point is well made.
Okay. We're ready to adjourn?
I think now would be a good time for question period, Deputy Mayor.
Did we not have question period?
Tried to do it because it was in the agenda.
I'm just following the agenda. Okay, question period at this time. Any questions? Anyone here that has a question? So there you go. Okay, now we can adjourn. No. No in camera.
Yeah.
Yep. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Rowley that the March 7, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting adjourn at 8:39 PM. All those in favor?